friends. Welcome back to the Happy Homeowner Podcast, Outdoor Edition. My name is Dan Keller, and I believe that owning a home is the largest and most valuable asset we have, second to our time. As a veteran mortgage professional, investor, and Puget Sound angler, my commitment is to bring you content each week that will fill each one of these buckets in your life. Jump on board with us today, enjoy the show, and we'll see you back in the marina. Hey friends, welcome back to another outdoor edition of the Happy Homeowner Podcast. We've got our regulars here again.
That's right.
This is just getting to be so much fun and so knowledgeable, but we're going to talk about Puget Sound shrimping.
Yep.
But before that, I think it'd be silly of us not to talk about what the heck's been going on over the last few weeks. I know with Lingcod and kokanee fishing, we are right in the early hunt of this summer's fishing season. So I've seen you out. You've been out kokanee fishing. Let's talk about kokanee real quick. What's working? What's not? Where you been?
Yeah.
And then we'll chat about lingcods, and then we'll get into shrimping.
Absolutely. Well, Lake Stevens is heating up for sure. This they have a kokanee derby actually May 18th, which is coming up next week. So it's great timing. The water's warming up. We're getting up to the temperature when those kokanee are really biting and starting to get pretty not easy to catch. I shouldn't say they're hard to catch. They can be, but they're biting a lot more when the water's this warm.
You've had some good tutorials too, because you've gone live when you've been out there. So head over to the John Sporting Goods page. You can see kind of some of the gear you were using, but real quick, depths. You said they were a little shallow.
Yeah, we were getting them. I mean, this is fishing last week. We were getting them on the downriggers. We ran 4 downriggers, so we have 2 kind of towards the stern of the boat, and then 2 a little bit higher up towards the bow.
Okay.
Our back downriggers were running at 9 feet. So, I mean, I could look down in the water and see my downrigger ball.
Okay.
So our setbacks are going to be anywhere from 40 to 55 feet. So you're setting it way behind these downrigger balls, and then we're dropping them. But yeah, the magic numbers were 9 and 12 feet. The ones up in front, we were running a little deeper at 12. And then we had our surface rods, and those ones were letting out, anywhere between 70 and 80 feet. Okay. So they're way the heck behind the boat. But those ones sure did good, and we're using, my buddy James Baxter makes these. They're called, he calls them his Baxter lures. Okay. He has a little bug that he uses, and he ties in, and man, that thing did really well. And then he also makes one that's a little bigger profile. It's called a minnow. Okay. It's literally a little minnow shape, and there's an orange and a pink one, and the orange one has been just lights out the last week.
So I'm going out on Saturday night with Hudson, and we're gonna have a blast. That's kind of how we started fishing about 10 years ago. Yeah. So we came into John's the other day, and I said, "Hey, you put a bunch on the deck the other day. What were you guys using?" And you gave me a handful of things. So I'm pumped to go out and do a little evening. We're doing a little evening fishing.
Yeah, now you've had a couple good days of nice weather, so that 9 and 12 feet could change a little bit. Even you're talking a couple days of heat. I would start to drop that. I wouldn't be afraid to go to 15, maybe even 20 feet.
Well, quick question for you guys while I'm here: if we're going out in the evening versus sun, you guys are going out early. You're out there
we're crack of dawn. We're watching the sun come up. Okay. Yeah.
So if you're in the evening, if you're going from 5 to 8 at night, just getting out there after baseball tournament, what are your thoughts? Deeper? Should we change any strategies at all out there?
Not necessarily. I think you want to go out when it's cooling off. Okay. You're going to have high temperatures all day, so that I would imagine is going to push these kokanee down. Okay. And then as it cools off in the later part of the day is when they're going to kind of come up. Like I said, I wouldn't be afraid to go 15, 20 feet now, and I would imagine that's where you're going to find them.
Well, those are tasty little buggers.
Oh yeah, they're the best. Yeah, they're wonderful.
Well, speaking of tasty, John, I know you've been out lingcod fishing. You've been staying local. Connor and I went up north. Let's talk about lingcod real quick.
Oh, the lingcod fishing's been so good. Yep. This is it's been really good the last 3 years, but this is definitely one of the best years ever. We're fishing on possession bar, and you're basically just drifting across the bar. If you haven't done it a lot, the best tip I can give you, you're going to catch all your fish. You might catch an occasional fish over 55 feet, but all your fish are going to be caught between 55 feet of water and 49 feet of water. Wow. There's not many places that are 49, but when you have a sudden little dip or a sudden little uptick in the depth where it gets a little shallower, you're gonna catch fish. And I've been using live bait. I've been going out and catching flounders. The smallest flounders work the best. Okay. And I've been using 6/0 hooks, spaced 6 inches apart from the bend of the hook to the eye of the next hook, and put them on there. Let it to the bottom, and bring your line up 5 feet. Yeah. And be adjusting it all the time, because where the lingcod are, it's rocky, and so if you don't keep adjusting the depth, you're going to lose some tackle.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then if you get a bite, you leave your rod holder, you leave your rod in the rod holder all the time. This is so much fun. They come up and they grab the fish, and your first inclination, like is with when you're downrigger fishing, you want to just rip that rod out of the rod holder and just start, just setting that hook. Well, you do that, you're not going to catch anything. You wait till the rod takes a really deep dive. And then you just ease the rod out of the rod holder, also gently, and start cranking really slow till the line gets real tight, and then he'll take line and he'll hook himself up. Okay. So don't hook him up anytime. And then the best tip I can give you, once you have him, once he hooks himself up, is reel at a steady pace. Don't pump the rod, just reel him in at a real steady pace, because if you do anything erratic and he's not hooked up real good, you'll lose the fish.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, it's got to be therapy for a lot of us out there that don't have a lot of patience, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's a test.
Hanging in there. Well, Connor, you did a couple of really good tutorials on your John's page too, where how to hook up live bait. Yeah. I think you went out with Captain Paul Kim. Yeah. We went up on the opener.
Just like John said, man, we were in that about 45 feet and maybe as deep as 55, and that was our money zone, man. I think we did 4 passes and we hooked 5 fish, and 3 of them were keepers. So I hooked one that was a little short that we let go, but most of the fish you're catching on these flounders too are going to be of size. You're not catching a lot of short fish, so it just makes it that much more fun.
That's awesome.
And don't be scared of these big tides. I went out yesterday. We hooked the first 4 fish we lost, and then we hooked 3 fish and got 2. But don't be afraid of these big tides. There was only 6 boats out yesterday. I think everybody saw the 13-foot swing in the tides and thought, well, this isn't going to be very much fun. Right. Well, you just back down. So you can keep your line straight up and down as you're drifting across the bar. And these big tides are actually pretty good tides to fish. And you're moving along, so you're covering a lot of ground pretty fast. Yep. So you have a better chance of locating fish, or the fish locating you.
Yep. Yeah, and like Tuesday we were fishing, so you had a high tide in the morning at 4 a.m. Paul Kim and Zach and I, we got up to Possession Bar at about, I would say, 6 a.m. We had our flounders and we were ready to roll. And that bite from 6 a.m. till 8:15 was when we killed our last fish. Okay. That water was moving at such a perfect pace to where that's when those fish were feeding. And then we did one more drift to try and catch our cabezon, and it got to a point where we weren't staying vertical, we weren't staying straight up and down, and the fish weren't biting.
Got it.
So it's important to try and be there around those times too.
And they go on and off the bite just like all other fish. Just because they're a bottom dweller doesn't mean that if you drift over the top of them, they're going to bite all day, because they don't.
That's right.
The morning fishing is the best, and as the day gets longer, the bite will get less and less and further between each fish. Yeah. And it's always that way.
Got it.
They get
There's
smarter.
no afternoon bite, it seems like.
I think they get a little smarter.
Yeah, they do.
Well, there's a ton of info on your page over on Facebook, your John Sporting Goods page. So head over there if you want more. We did a podcast on Lingcod Fishing, and that's over on the page as well. But today, let's transition to shrimping. We've got the opener coming up next week. We're heading out next
16th.
week.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's have you guys talk about that, and we'll get this up ASAP too, because there's some. I've learned a ton from you guys over the past couple of years, and I'll tell you what. Last year, John's advice, with a really good group of guys, Connor, Nate Fenton, and a couple of other guys, but we had to throw a whole pot back.
Yeah. We were dumping shrimp back.
We were dumping shrimp back. So hopefully after today, you'll be doing the same thing. But let's talk about shrimping.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about the Puget Sound, and then John can go up north and talk about that. May 16th is our opener. The only place it's not opening the 16th is Area 12, which is Hood Canal. That's opening May 17th, just so everybody is aware of that. You're shrimping from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the Puget Sound tides, they're wonderful tides for this. This is
the best you can get.
This is about as good as it gets. We should all hit these ones out of the park. So you have a low tide in the morning at 7:30 a.m. Okay, and your high tide's not till noon. So we're going to be able to fish a slow part of this tide when it's to slack, and that is the most ideal conditions you want for shrimp.
And there's not that much water movement that day either.
No, you got
this is really, really good shrimp.
Yeah, you have 2.1 feet of water moving, which is virtually, it's moving, but it's not moving very much, which is ideal. So for the Puget Sound guys that are shrimping, and of course up in the San Juans, it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful tide on the 16th. Now, tides are a little different up in the Strait, if I'm not mistaken, so...
Yeah, the tides, like you said, are at noon.
Yep.
In Puget Sound, might vary a little bit on where you're at. And the same with the Straits of Juan de Fuca. The tides are about 10 o'clock in the morning on the 16th.
Yeah.
And that'll vary a little bit from Area 6 to Area 7. But, you could start throwing your pots in the water, at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you should be done. If you have good bait, you should be done at 10.
Yep.
Wow.
And, don't forget to put anchors on your pots to weight your pots down a little bit.
Right.
And but boy, I tell you what, these are nice tides, especially for out in the Straits of Juan de Fuca. You're always fighting those big tides out there, and sometimes you have a 1 hour window to shrimp. But gosh, it's going to be about a 3 hour window.
Beautiful.
On the 16th.
Absolutely.
Love it. Okay. Cool. You mentioned anchoring down your pots, so let's talk some tactics and some strategies to help. One, save you some money because those aren't the cheapest.
It's not a cheap endeavor, that's
and
for
then
sure.
we'll get you some tactics too to help put more shrimp in your pots. But you mentioned anchoring down the bottom. Why don't we just talk about how a pot should look, how you guys rig a pot?
Yeah. I'll start from the pot. So if I'm up in the Straits or we're up in Area 7 shrimping, there's always an anchor attached to my pot. What are they? 1.2 pound little anchor. It's a folding anchor, so it opens. And the idea behind that is it's going to grab the bottom. So if your pot is moving a little bit, it's going to get to
slow it down.
It's going to slow it way down.
Okay.
And anytime you go shrimping, if your pot's moving just the slightest bit, you get hooked up with somebody and it pulls your pot around, I can guarantee you there's not going to be very many shrimp in your pot.
And you have a 10-foot piece of line from the anchor to the pot with a snap, and snap it onto the bottom of the pot.
Right.
Okay.
And I always recommend there's a little shackle on the anchor. Put a zip tie on there, to tie your rope to, because if that anchor gets stuck on the bottom, you can break that zip tie and at least get your pot back.
Oh, there you go.
I've had a pot where our anchor got stuck, and you fold the things in half from wrenching on it. You just destroy your pot.
Wow.
So you want to have something there that you can release from the anchor, and a big heavy-duty zip tie will do that.
Okay.
You want to have enough weight in your pot.
Your pot should weigh a minimum of 30 pounds.
Yeah,
okay.
30 is a pretty good weight. Between that and the anchor, it'll stay put, not on the most extreme tides, but and you're going to catch a lot more shrimp. I tell you what, if your pot is rocking on the bottom, remember your rope is pulling on your pot all the time from the wave action. Your pot doesn't just go to the bottom and everything is static. It doesn't work like that. So you got there's a couple things. You got wind and tide and current, and so between the anchor and a 30-pound pot.
Yeah.
And it's still going to move. In Puget Sound, it's not going to move very much, but out in the Straits of Juan de Fuca, it's not, it might move a little tiny bit.
Yeah, right. And then 2 bait barrels for sure. We have 2 of the 9-inch long bait barrels. More bait in there, the merrier for me. I'm trying to have a better smell than my next door neighbor who's shrimping next to me, right?
Yeah.
The more bait you can put in there, the better. I've hung a chunk of salmon in there. Say you have some freezer burnt salmon. If you get those little crab bait clips and you can clip it to the top of your pot, I'm telling you what, those shrimp will eat every ounce of meat off of that fillet.
Really?
And you'll pull it up and it'll just be the skin of that salmon. It's pretty incredible.
Wow.
A really good tip on mixing the bait up, like Connor said, you use 2 bait barrels, and you only fill them about 3/4 of the way, because if you fill it all the way to the top, the water won't flow through your bait barrel and disperse that scent. So I have 2 buckets of bait, one fairly thick, kind of like peanut butter, and one I don't want to say it's runny, but it's pretty thin.
Yeah.
So that thin bait gets out in the water column instantly, and then you have that little thicker bait that won't run out.
Yeah.
So after 1 hour, when you pull your pot, that thin bait should be almost probably 9/10 of it will be gone, and about half the thick bait will be gone. So, bring a good tip is to bring a little bit of the oil that you mix your bait up with, so that if you have to thin your bait up while you're out there, because boy, I tell you what, having the right thickness of bait is really key to catching shrimp speedily.
Well, I want to stay on this for a minute, because the questions that came in from John's, and then even I got a couple of direct messages on my Facebook just from friends and people that follow me. Their struggles in the past have been bait. So you were telling me the other day, if you pull your pot, and you can assess your bait by when you pull your pots, if there's less than, like you said, about 50% of the sludge. So let's say you pull your pots and you got a quarter left. You need to thicken up your bait. Yeah.
And when you pull your pot up, let's say you don't have your limit of shrimp for everybody in the boat, you don't reuse bait.
Got it.
Dump it out.
Okay.
And put fresh bait in there.
Okay.
Because once it's been in the water for an hour, all the good scent's all bleached out of there.
Right.
Okay.
And your thin bait is going to disperse into the water column. So the idea of having that thick bait still in there is when the shrimp get in there, they have something to eat on. It's just like crabbing. They get into the pot, you have some sort of bait for them to sit there and gnaw and feed, and they'll stay in your pot.
And that's another reason why you like to hang a salmon carcass or something.
Exactly.
There. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Kokanee carcass works great.
Yeah. We'll
have
probably
some of
throw
those.
a few of those in from this weekend. So, recipe. I think you have it on your you have it on your website?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Key ingredients on your website. So if you want, just go there. We don't need to spend a bunch of time talking about it right now, because you'll actually want the measurements and the ingredients there. But what I'll do, if you watch this on YouTube, down in the description of the video, I'll put a link to where you guys can find their recipe on your website.
Yep.
Okay.
You know what I've done the last couple of years? I've used less of the shrimp pellets and more mackerel.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And that seems to work a little bit better, because I know people, they only use mackerel and nothing else, and these guys who catch a lot of shrimp.
Okay.
But what's nice about the pellets, it kind of thickens it up a little bit,
Right.
so it doesn't just all disappear when you put it out.
Okay.
The other thing I sell is a frozen block of mackerel. My bait guy gives me fresh ground mackerel, and it comes in these little blocks, and it's a nice little additive to add to that shrimp bait too.
You throw it in frozen, or you thaw that out?
Let it thaw out, and you dump it into your mix.
And mix it up.
The nice part too, like John was saying, there'll be chunks in there. So in your bait barrel, you'll have chunks of mackerel in there, and it just adds a little more flavor and substance to it.
So the three basic ingredients are the shrimp pellets, mackerel, canned mackerel, and Puss in Boots, Friskies, ocean whitefish and tuna, cat food.
There it is right here. Shrimp bait formula by John Martinis. I'll put this link down
and
there.
then your oil of some sort. The Procure makes it. The Super Bait, they make oil too. Theirs is a little thinner, so it's a great thinning agent for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Hey, I want to go back real quick too to weighting down your pot. You say the ideal weight is right around 30 pounds, maybe a little bit more. You guys sell weights there. What's the best way to weight down your pot?
I sell little 5-pound rectangles.
Okay.
My lead guy pours them for me, and it's just for weighing down shrimp and crab pots. It's the least expensive way you can do it. They're still $15 a block.
Okay.
So it's not super cheap, but you at least add 15 pounds, so you'd add 3 of them to your pot.
And put them underneath the tunnel entrances of your pot on the inside.
Right.
And zip tie them, and don't zip tie them with the the standard zip ties you get. Get those real thick zip ties, because if not, they last one trip.
Well, I heard you talking to a customer in there the other day that spending $30, $50 extra on some weights is going to save you $300-$400 when your pot drifts off the shelf. So
that's the other important part is your flotation. We sell those polyform. There's LD2 and an A2 buoy, and it's your big inflatable buoy. And I know John's done it, I've done it, where you have your shrimp pots get taken off with the current or of some sorts, falls off a ledge, and shoot, those buoys float your whole setup. I mean, it's a pain in the butt to find them, but at least you can go back and get a floating pot.
It's hard to find them without it. Only 2 times probably out of the last 25 years I've had to go chase pots down, and you'll find them, a mile and a half away.
Yep.
And with those big LD2 flotation buoys, you can see them in the distance.
Yep.
In Puget Sound, you could find them pretty fast. Wouldn't make much difference. But when you're shrimping out in Straits of Juan de Fuca, San Juan Islands area, sometimes, gosh, the currents just get weird sometimes and take your pots away, and it's not very much fun. Plus, when you find them, there isn't any shrimp in them.
Yeah.
So we're not going to talk a lot about location and maps right now because you already have that covered in your manual. And so I want to encourage you, if you come into John's, buy John's, what do you call it? The fishing manual, saltwater guide.
Fishing journal.
I've got one in my boat. It's so valuable. But you can also go online and just look up John's Sporting Goods shrimp maps. Mm-hmm. That's what I just did, and there's dozens of maps here. So instead of talking about maybe locations, when you get to the location, what are you doing to make sure, one, you're on the shrimp? Is there ideal depths?
Yeah.
Give us some strategies about identifying where to drop these pots.
Well, like in the Puget Sound, when you got such a late opener, you can drop your pots at 9 a.m. So typically we get to a spot, and generally in the Puget Sound, you can get away with going a little shallower as well. So I'll go anywhere from 220 feet up to 280 feet. That's kind of your window. And with 4 pots, your string you can set in different depths. And when you find out the depth that there's plentiful of shrimp, you can move kind of everything to that depth line. But when we get there, you're trolling around looking at the bottom, and you're looking for little clouds of shrimp on the bottom. Yep. I would think that would be probably one of the more important things for you to do. You have enough time to where you can kind of cruise around, you can troll around and look for those clouds of bait, and find a spot that they're all congregated to, and that's where I'm going to focus on.
So for the salmon anglers out there, just bait. You're looking for a bait ball at the bottom.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
There's the best way to do it is to adjust your fish finder, and almost all modern fish finders you can do this. Just look at the last 40 or 50 feet of the depth.
Okay.
And look at that, because then you can reel the shrimp just stick out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's lots of them. There's so many of them. A lot of time they're 25, 30 feet thick on the bottom. You think, oh boy, I'm going to put this pot down there. But remember, a lot of those shrimp are so small that they can get in and out of your pot. They're not all the big jumbo shrimp.
Yep.
The big mature ones that get stuck in your pot, that your pot has a 1 inch or 7/8 inch mesh. So, but that's where the shrimp are at, and there'll be lots of them, and you'll see them, and it makes quite a bit of difference if you can just put your pot right on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And you're looking for, I know, John, I heard you talking about this the other day. You're kind of looking for that shelf, and you said that you were specifically in the San Juans right around 250 to 300 feet is what you like?
Yeah, and I'll set a pot like 250, 275, 300. Sometimes I'll put one shallower and one deeper. I have 400-foot ropes on my pot, so you don't want to put them out at 400.
Yeah.
Because it might get deeper.
Right.
Cool.
Depth. So adjust your depth. So especially in Puget Sound, I go from shallow to deeper on my first set. Well, most time you get a limit on that first set, but you never know. It really varies from year to year. So sometimes you have to throw them out twice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. Okay. Gosh, what did we forget? We forget anything? I mean, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. No, I think we got it all.
We got the gear.
Yeah.
We got location. You got maps on John's. How important is it for you to have a good pot puller? And if so, let's talk about that real quick.
Don't even consider pulling them by hand because they all jump out. Mm-hmm. Most of the shrimp, 90% of the shrimp you catch can swim right through the bottom, through the sides of your pot. In fact, I believe that a good portion of the shrimp that you catch in a pot doesn't go through the tunnels. They just swim right through the sides of your pot, and they get in there and they stay, and then they get pinned to the bottom. So if you pull it by hand, you're probably not going to get a limit of shrimp. You're probably not going to look like very much fun at the end of the day. Yeah. So you can either use the commercial grade type haulers or semi-commercial grade haulers, or you can use like the Ace line hauler, something that fits to a Scotty or a Cannon downrigger. And if you're going shrimping 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year, that's all you need. You don't need a real expensive piece of machinery to pull these pots up. And remember, they also double as a crab pot puller.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. You sell both of these pullers at your shop.
I sell the Brutus Ace Line haulers.
Yeah.
I sell those, and those adapt to Scotty and Cannon mounts. Yep. And then I sell the Scotty 2500 pop puller.
There you go.
So that'll,
And you have to have a 40 amp fuse.
Yeah, we've made that mistake.
Yeah. Having 30 amp fuses, you're going to blow your fuses during the day. So trade your, I just use 40 amps for my downriggers and the pots. So I just leave them in there all the time.
Yeah, guys, this could be your medical tip of the day. You blow a fuse out there, and you're stuck pulling that up. Your back isn't going to work the next day.
I've given people fuses out there on the water before.
You've given me one.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, when I was with, I can't remember who I was shrimping with, but you.
Yeah, be prepared. If you're going shrimping, have fuses with you.
Yeah, amen. There's the tip of the day.
Just some of the little tiny things that don't cost anything.
Yeah.
Make or break can make or break your day.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a wrap. I think we're pretty good in regards to tactics, locations, strategies. Is there anything else, John, that we missed?
Not really. The biggest consideration, and I'll reiterate that the bait is so important. That's the difference between the guys who catch a lot of shrimp really fast and the people who go out there and struggle to catch shrimp. Go the extra mile. Shrimping is an expensive sport. Spend some extra money on the bait and mix it up correctly, and it's going to be the difference between having an okay day and a really good, fun day catching lots of shrimp.
So let's just recap that. So number one, I will put your recipe, which I'm looking at it right here. I'll put the link in the description of this video, and then when we throw it on your page as well at John's, we'll put it in the comments so you can just pull it up right here. But you got two different bait boxes, two different formulas. You have a thicker one and a thinner one. The thicker one is a consistency of what? Did you say that's the peanut butter?
Peanut butter.
Okay. Okay.
And the other one's thinned out by half.
Okay.
And keep an eye on if you're making your shrimp bait up the day before, it really gets thicker overnight.
Okay.
So take a look at it.
Yeah.
And is that what you guys typically do? You go day before, or do you go morning of, or?
No, I do it the night before.
Night before.
Sure, the day
yeah,
before.
it takes a while to mix all that stuff up and get it together and get it the right consistency.
Okay.
And I mix mine with a drill with. It's got a paddle on it. I got it at one of the Home Depot or Lowe's. That I think they use it for mixing.
Like painters use it for mixing.
Yeah, paint.
Or,
I think something.
Or grouters. Grouters use
for
it to mix
grout.
their
That's
grout.
what it's for.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
That's awesome.
Boy, that works really good. And a standard drill won't work. You gotta have a half horsepower.
That's how thick
drill.
the stuff is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I want to wrap with this. All right.
And don't do it in the garage.
Don't do it in the garage or in the house. This stuff is stinky. Let's wrap with this. We're going to go out shrimping this week, and we bring home a bunch of prawns. How are you cooking them? How are you making them that night for dinner?
I like to put them on skewers.
Okay.
So I'd skewer them. I would do whatever seasonings you like, garlic. I like to put dill in there, and I like lemon, and then some sort of Cajun, chipotle, cayenne, stuff like that. But I skewer them and I barbecue them, and then I dip them. You can dip them in butter, or you can just eat them as they are. But I think a skewer and barbecue is about as good as it gets.
Money.
Yeah.
What about you, John?
Same old.
Yeah.
I like putting. Basting them with butter. Everything's good with butter and bacon, isn't it? Isn't that funny how that is? All this stuff that's bad for you is really good.
Yeah.
Tasting anyway. And then once you baste them in butter, this is before they go on the grill, I like to sprinkle pretty liberally Montreal steak seasoning on there.
Okay.
Oh, I'll tell you what. And remember, these shrimp are going to be in the shell. Do you put them in the shell?
No, I de-shell mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I do them in the shell. Works pretty good.
So you grill them with the shell.
Yeah, and then you don't burn the meat.
Okay. Okay. I love that. Montreal on shrimp, too.
Yeah, gosh, it's really
That's
good.
how you eat everything.
You can put that stuff on everything, and it's good.
Yeah.
Lingcod too.
Well, I always ask you guys when we do a podcast, we're going to go catch some food. How are we going to eat it? How are we going to make it? So that's awesome, you guys. Do me a huge favor. Go to John's. If you just go to Google and Google John's Sporting Goods, would you mind if you got 5 minutes and you've gotten any value from any of these videos, go there and leave them a review. Leave them a review, how it's helped you or how it's helping you. A 5-star review would go a long way. Yeah. I know I'm a small business owner. Reviews are huge. It raises you up in the ranks on Google, and you guys are just doing it. Every time I go in there, the energy's up. You're giving such great advice. And you're making such great content on Facebook. So keep it up, and we'll see you out there this next week on the water catching some shrimp.
Yeah,
all right?
baby. Good luck shrimping.
Have fun, everybody.
Bye, guys.